There was recently a video by Never Knows Best about Emil Pagliarulo, and it is a masterpiece. I've never seen a video that was more effectively designed as a trap to respond to than this 2-hour, 18-minute dissection of criticism against Starfield's lead designer. I say that as somebody who tried and arguably failed to produce my own trap video with Elden Ring, that it takes a surprising amount of effort to produce something like this. I'll be expected to respond, so I will address the serious stuff first. I would like to apologize to committing plagiarism to the Joker. I copied his famous line he says to Robert De Niro where he says, "You get what you deserve," and then he shoots him. I found it a fitting ending to my Starfield video. After all, it's a response to the comments I've received sycophantically defending Bethesda over the years. I like it because to say I'm wrong about that is to imply that Starfield is not as good a game as they deserve. What I am about to say may cause some viewers to want to go leave a comment. I ask strongly that you do not do this, nor any other interaction with Never Knows Best. And I will elaborate why in a bit. Never believes I stole this line from his Outer Worlds video. An Outer Worlds video I never saw. I didn't even know he made one, because the only time I looked at other Outer Worlds videos on YouTube was a short stint watching Salt Factory's video before I decided I didn't want to finish it, and later when the video was done, to look at the thumbnails people had made so mine would stand out in the search results. His thumbnail was so generic, being just the game's box art with text that just says mediocre, that I paid no attention to it or who made it. However, you are free to disbelieve that, in which case I have a backup argument. H-Bomber-Guy's big plagiarism video that everyone knows and talked about released on December 2nd. My patron cut of the Starfield video released on December 4th. The public cut was released on December 7th. If you go into the section titled Terra Firma, about an hour and a half in on the public cut, you will see a timecode running at the bottom of the screen for almost the entire section. This timecode is absent in my patron cut. What happened is that there is an error in my patron cut at 1:34:10 where I accidentally left in a repeat take, and in the process of fixing that error, I enabled a hidden layer I use to quickly find source spots of audio in Audition, and simply forgot to disable it again. What this proves is that in response to something pointed out to me by my patrons, I had to go back into the edit, fix the mistake, accidentally introduce a new mistake, and render that out. The reason this is significant is that by the time I would have done this, discourse would be widespread about plagiarism. If I had plagiarized, I would have had ample opportunity and reason to change this single line. Both in the patron cut, which was rendered on the 3rd, and the public cut, which was rendered on the 5th. I even changed the ending because in modifying the error, I had to remove audio, which means I had to increase the length of the credits to bring the runtime back to the rounded 8 hours. However, you might ask, if I used the same line as Never and I stole mine from Joker, does that mean he stole his from Joker as well? Most likely, because his video released 4 months after the Joker did, which means that yes, I am reverse Unoing this plagiarism charge back at him, but in all reality, it's fine. They're both literally just a reference. Next, let's talk about defamation. Yes, Never implies that I am potentially guilty of defamation against Emil Pagliarulo. Defamation is when you remind people of something someone whom planned a presentation, got their passport, and flew 8 hours to Copenhagen said in public. I said that Bethesda doesn't use a design document. I clarified in my video when I said this, what Emil had said on Kotaku the day of release, that Fallout 76 podcast he did in early 2023, and that presentation he gave 7 years ago. That they had smaller, more decentralized documentation, but that is no replacement for a centralized vision. I even clarified that not all of the blame is on Emil. Just because I reference this point, because it's the video's thesis, as a joke multiple times without re-clarifying every single time that Bethesda does use some limited documentation, is not me being dishonest. I cannot control what people decide to do with the information I provide. For example, some people's takeaway from my video was that Emil was the lead on Skyrim. He was not. He was a senior quest designer. while the lead role was filled by Bruce Nesmith and Kurt Coleman. I even said as much when introducing Bruce Nesmith and his interview. To say I am responsible for the lessening of Bruce Nesmith and Kurt Coleman's contributions to the point of damaging their careers by making people think they didn't work on Skyrim because someone came to an errant conclusion is not defamation, and if it were, I would suggest never review his entire video catalog. Bethesda would have a hard time proving I moved the needle on Starfield sales. They'd have a harder time proving I even moved the needle on the Steam reviews. I don't think you can even meaningfully prove that my video was the direct cause of Immel's 15-part Twitter thread, given he instead mentioned the Reddit thread. It's more likely that discourse picked up from the much more popular Nakey Jakey video that released on the 9th, and some people brought the design document discourse with them. That turned into the Reddit post that Immel would mention, and then that sparked his Twitter thread. Then when people saw a game developer publicly coping and seething, the story picked up further from there. Bethesda was already dealing with negative news about covering their public responses to Steam reviews, so an actual design lead writing a 15-part post was going to catch people's attention. As Asmongold pointed out, he could have written a good response. He could have tried to clarify the things that are being said about him, instead of downplaying the talk and assuming that there's just some magical expiration date on information he gave voluntarily and reiterated. It is not my fault that he made the situation worse. It is, however, my fault that I asked him for an unmonetized interview. Seriously, the play here wasn't the guaranteed million-view Starfield video no matter what I said. It was apparently maliciously lying and baiting Immel in order to get a hastily produced podcast interview that would never happen in a million years, that might get 100,000 views if I was lucky and would make me no money. But hey, if he did do that, then it would be the start of the same process Never talks about of people spreading the word, giving a good explanation for his decisions. And I was operating in good faith in offering that. But it will not happen because the ship sailed on me ever getting an interview with a Bethesda employee before I even had 100 subscribers. It was, as I've said, purely optics to indicate that it was not I who was avoiding this conversation. The last thing I want to mention is that Never says I called him a cuck.
Speaking of which, what did you have to say about me?
You're a cuck. You're a fucking cuck. Not only are you a cuck, you're like fat bastard cuck.
Oh, I guess he doesn't like me.
The context he leaves out is that it is in response to the following quote he said in his Skyrim video.
I suppose, now that you've stuck with me for 5 hours, I should admit that the basis of my ex-lover theory comes from personal experience. I loved this series. The Elder Scrolls was like the first serious long-term relationship of my gaming dating life. I thought it was the one, that it understood me, that of all the games that I made, it was the one that was designed just for me. I guess I was young and naive. I didn't understand that things would change, for both of us. A lot has happened since those early days, but I'll always cherish those memories. I've never felt as connected to any virtual world as I did with you, back then. And now I'm getting older, I wonder if I'll ever feel that way about the virtual world again. I know you've gotten older too. I guess you've moved on. But I still wonder sometimes if you miss it. And I know you've achieved a lot. It's incredible really looking at how far you've come. But you had a passion back then. There was a spark. You understood what it meant to dream. And I just hope you still understand that. I hear you're with a new guy now. One with more money than me.
Oh my fucking god. You're a cuck. You're a cuck in your own metaphor. You're a fucking cuck. Really? Why would you...
I hope it works out for you. I moved on too, you know. Actually, I ended up starting a YouTube channel. You'd never guess what it's about. And it's been going pretty well. Although sometimes the videos do get a little weird. Well, this isn't exactly how I expected I'd end this series. But here we are. Hey, Elder Scrolls, if you're listening...
You literally... Not only are you a cuck, you're like fat bastard cuck.
Leaving out the context that you set up the joke yourself that Elder Scrolls was your girlfriend who left you for a richer guy is really all I needed to hear to know that I did not need to take this seriously. But I still watched it anyways, well, only half of it. I mean, he only watched 25% of my video, so fair's fair, I guess. Within 5 minutes of runtime, about 3 in real time, I concluded that this video was a trap. Everything I heard about further affirmed this conclusion. His thesis is about fact-checking, and he encourages people to fact-check his video. He also includes an extensive bibliography complete with timestamps, but he didn't archive anything, so this will be completely dysfunctional in 2 years when No More Mutants closes down, or there's another protest and more Redditors delete their posts. I mean, did you even consider how lucky it was that the person who wrote that Reddit post integral to your video happened to not delete their account since they made that post? Anyways, the ARG works like this. You need to fact check the information he provides. For example, a big part of his video is about a Reddit post he believes sparked this entire conversation. He leaves out that 6 months prior to this post, Joseph Anderson released his 1 year later video on Fallout 4 that got 12 million views. Now, which is more likely, that I found it out from a popular analysis that I sourced in my Skyrim video, or that I learned it from a random post on Reddit? However, when presenting the chronology, he completely fucks up the dates. For example, he says that the second Reddit post was a year after the first, when in reality it was 5 months. That's a nitpick, but there are many more things like this throughout, and he did ask us to fact check. He quotes a post on No More Mutants that is positive towards Emil, but leaves out the second half of the post where he says, "but," and goes back on his statement. The more attention you pay, the more you pick up. I think it's a trap and a test. He wants to see if his viewers are paying enough attention to actually critically engage with his points, or are just agreeing with him blindly. It fits into his narrative he gives about people blindly agreeing with the Reddit post without seeing the talk for themselves. And of course, it serves as a vehicle for him to do to me and Kritosis what we have allegedly done to Emil. Even though he didn't sufficiently prove that Kritosis was inspired by the Reddit post, and I was not inspired by Kritosis, as I myself cited this very talk in my Oblivion video that came out for patrons 4 days before Kritosis streamed about it. Also in this video, I mentioned design documents, something Never alleges I have never mentioned prior to Kritosis' own analysis on this matter. Once again, my mention of a design document predates Kritosis by 4 days. I also mentioned them 5 times in the Skyrim video. I think what he misses is that Starfield is the first game I have covered where I talk about the development and Emil was in a lead design position. There's no reason to dive into Emil's mentality towards leading on designing games if I've never taken that approach towards a game he was a lead on. The exception would be Fallout 76, but I didn't talk much about Emil in that video at all. Another thing is that he says that in an ideal world, people would have watched the talk and read the Reddit post prior to him making his points. He says this 20 minutes into the video, after already making his points about the talk and beginning to explain the Reddit post. So why did he consciously decide to include snippets of the talk in the opening instead of just a call to action encouraging people to watch it for themselves? Because it's all part of his test. He wants to see if you notice the problems with taking his word on his cherry-picked selections. It's exactly what he accuses us of doing, after all. The next thing of note is that he makes a call for people to not harass this Reddit user, whom, by the way, he did not censor the name of and concluded that he believed was a child at the time. But he does this after tearing the post apart, not before. Meaning, guess what? They got harassed and immediately found out about the video. When he says this, the imagery he chooses to use is a guy sleeping on the beach while making empty threats that he will ban you if you harass anybody in this video, because he'll somehow magically know. Never. People aren't that stupid. They know what pseudonyms are, and many use different names on different platforms. And in any case, are you going to be a watchdog now on Reddit as well as my and Kritosis' communities? Will you be doing that in a month, 6 months, a year, in perpetuity? Do you actually think a ban from the Never Knows Best comment section is a serious dissuader? If he was serious, he would have done what every commentary channel has done for years and placed this disclaimer at the front of the video like I did. Ultimately, you cannot stop people from deciding to use the information you provide to harass others, or even just leave comments, which is why for most people, standard operating procedure is to censor the name of anyone who is featured that is not a public figure. However, that may be the point. I believe that he intentionally sabotaged some of his arguments and argued in bad faith in order to act as a vigilante and dish out justice, as he sees it. The call against harassment is nothing more than optics. It looks good that he says that, even if he completely fucked up the execution and got someone harassed, indicated by the visual of a guy sleeping on the beach. He, in fact, states that he wants to cause Kritos' stress so that he can see the unfair strain Kritos has put on Immel. In his section on Kritos, he makes a point about Kree changing Immel's words. The examples he gives are, at best, either misinterpretations or just extrapolations. However, each point he makes is significantly weaker than the last, and his final point is just a forward response repeating something Kritos said. Yet somehow he managed to do this series of weaker and weaker arguments in chronological order, meaning that I doubt it was an accident. In one point, Never himself changes Immel's meaning by removing the word personal from Immel saying personal experiences in order to quibble that first-hand experiences are not just experiences.
So, Kritos claims Immel's rule is only right about things you have first-hand experience with, and yet in reality, all Immel said was draw from your own experiences. He did not say they have to be first-hand.
He is guilty of the very thing he's accusing Kree of, which he claims was changing Immel's words, and even leaves the evidence on screen with closed captions as he is doing it. That can't be a mistake. You have to go to the extra effort to make sure the closed captions were on screen when you changed Immel's words. However, the ultimate conclusion Private Sessions and I had to this video was that Never is likely not doing well. It makes sense. Ever since he made that adult game review, YouTube has unfairly messed with his monetization, age restriction, algorithmic placements, and even random channel deletions. Here he is, having his videos and relevancy outshined by smaller YouTubers, one of whom he has a negative history with. He sees an opportunity to get some revenge, even if it means nitpicking and quibbling, and in the same breath try to pull a fast one to avoid his own accountability, hence the trap. The video is perfect in terms of being difficult to respond to. He knows that Kree and I are most likely to respond brashly via stream, but any stream response I do would invariably cut out the entire section on the Reddit post because it's a faulty premise and it's entirely irrelevant afterwards. If we cut that section out, he can respond that we did not include the full context, and if we include it, we'd likely lose the viewers we would want to see the parts relevant to us. It's a win-win for him. He even makes the point that summaries, which Kritos' video was not by the way, shouldn't be longer than the original piece, putting a time restriction on the response. Unfortunately, I do not think things are going to go his way. Asmongold has already responded to his inclusion in the video, and it was not charitable. If you want to talk about avoiding a shitstorm of unfiltered hate comments, maybe don't swing at the huge streamer with the weak stuff. I was going to advise that he should try to make things right, but I don't think there's a chance of putting that particular genie back in the bottle anymore. If he thinks this is going to go poorly for Kritos, what will actually happen is Kritos will get content out of this and the opportunity to appear on larger platforms. As for myself, I do not see a reason to respond further via video than I already have. I think the parts I did address are the most serious and likely unironic accusations in the video. The rest appears to be argued in equally bad faith as the Kritos section, meaning I would just be taking time away from my current WoW project. Most people convinced by this are likely already people I filtered out years ago. I will not engage with a video intentionally operating in bad faith, made to prove a point to show me how it feels. He lost his chance to get a response out of me by not airing his grievances sooner about the Skyrim streams while I was still talking about Bethesda games. However, this is not the last I will speak on this, as I've already have been invited onto a larger platform to discuss this issue. So, if you're unsatisfied that I'm not taking this particularly seriously, just wait for that. I made this response short because I believe a long response would be bad for his outlook on life, and I've already decided to never release the recording of my live reaction to the video. However, I cannot control any of the other people that were named in this video or have taken an interest in it. And with that, I want to conclude on something I realized after I made my Starfield video. In just an hour of research, I turned up more developer interviews for classic World of Warcraft than exists in the last quarter century for Bethesda. We can only come to conclusions based on the information that is given to us, and Bethesda is simply a black box that heavily controls what information they give. They do this on purpose. Meanwhile, I have a literal 300-page book that details everything about Classic WoW down to the layout of the office they had in development. And guess what? They used a decentralized design document too, but that makes sense when you have a development team measured in the dozens, where every developer can walk a short distance to any other developer's office if they have questions. And there are many stories provided of exactly that happening. So, no, I do not want to spend a whole lot of time dealing with this. I would much rather get back to reading this book. Never's just going to have to accept that his video actually benefited the people he called out. For me, it cleared up a sinus headache that had me bedridden all day.